Aloha, I'm Lyla Berg. Thank you for tuning in to Island Focus. We're broadcasting this program again from my home so you can meet some of the people who influence our daily lives. Thank you for being with us on Island Focus. With us today on Island Focus, I have the pleasure of talking with Ron Mizutani, who is the president and CEO of the Hawai'i Foodbank. So wonderful to see you, Ron. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Lyla. It's great to see your smiling face as always.
At this most challenging, interesting, dramatic time, the food bank has stepped up and your leadership really has demonstrated resilience.
And that's been a word that we've all been using recently. But resilience is something that I really want to focus on, at least with our conversation now, but also in conversations with our team and with community. We need to start talking resilience, not minimizing what we're dealing with on a daily basis right now with numbers and all the health issues that a lot of families are facing and decisions that they're making. But we need to think post-COVID as well.
Can you give us a picture of where we were, where we are now, and definitely the lessons you've learned to take into the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson I think we learned, Lyla, is we need to be more resilient as a community. And we didn't realize, even our own organization, let alone the state, and even our own communities and families, first of all, we didn't know what COVID was going to do to us. No one prepared for COVID. I certainly did not. Our budget certainly did not prepare for a COVID response, but it's also taught us that we can do this, we can respond, and we can feed those families, some of them who've never raised their hands in their lives. And we can also assure folks that this infrastructure that we have at the food bank is very robust, and our partner agencies that help us distribute the food, they will respond in the biggest and most incredible crisis this world has ever faced. So the lessons at the end of the day, if I were to summarize it, is that we learned how strong Hawaii really is, and whether it be through responding through monetary donations, volunteering, and in my own team, Lyla, I have to acknowledge that we may not be defined as first responders, but our team has been on the front line from day one. And they too know that they are exposing themselves and ultimately their families. Never once did they even hesitate. Everybody said, what do we need to do? And that resilience-minded focus is appreciated by me. I'm humbled to serve alongside them. I feel good about what tomorrow will look like, just based on the lessons we've already learned.
And you have a skill of bringing people together. You know, when we talk about food, it's not just what we import, which is 99% of what we use. It's also our local growers.
Yeah, one of the things that we did early in this pandemic, because of inventory shortages and the fragility of inventory because of that vast Pacific Ocean, is I called Brian Miyamoto at Hawaii Farm Bureau. I said, look, Brian, what do we need to do to keep our farmers farming? How can we keep our ranchers ranching? And we set up this innovative initiative where Hawaii Food Bank actually purchased food from our farmers to keep them in business and keep the conversation going of how essential the farmers are and our ranchers. We even got involved with our Longline Association because our fisher community and industry needed assistance as well. So these innovative initiatives help start the conversation about really being resilient and self-sustaining. And this conversation needs to continue post-COVID, and decision makers need to understand the role. If we want to be truly resilient, we cannot rely on food 100% coming from the U.S. mainland. It's just not healthy and it's not safe. If we don't respond to that now, after learning the lessons learned now, shame on us.
Well, and what I hear you saying actually is the interaction and the interconnectedness of who we are is what sustains us. When we talk about resiliency, it's not just bouncing back, it's coming back even stronger.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, I once said we weren't prepared for COVID, but COVID wasn't prepared for Hawaii. And I don't mean that in a real cliche, aloha spirit. I truly believe we have responded as a community. When you think about my annual budget, Lyla, of purchasing food, because we're such a giving community, to match supply and demand on blue sky days where hunger is a crisis every day for many families. But with COVID, with this pandemic, that $400,000 budget, which was gone in seconds. Since March, when our first positive, we spent $4.8 million to purchase food just to match supply and demand. So how do you do that? We did it with community support, philanthropy, our foundations, believing in what we do, trusting in what we do. And really, it was just the community responding to our good work, but also saying, you know what, Hawaii Food Bank, we trust you to do the right thing. And again, we've seen people raise their hands that never thought they'd have to in their lives.
It must be very humbling also
For sure.
for you and for your staff to recognize that you're not only providing a service, but you're also helping the human spirit to believe they can go on.
Yeah, a meal will do that, Lyla. A meal can provide hope and inspiration. And I also ask our volunteers, and I remind our own staff, do not judge. Hunger takes a tremendous amount of courage to raise your hand. It's one of those subjects that sometimes culturally or even we don't do that. If somebody comes in a Mercedes, a Tesla, which we've seen, do not judge. We don't know their story. Every vehicle has a story. Every family has a story. You may have two people working in the visitor industry. We don't know their story. Respect them, smile. They may not make eye contact. They may not even say thank you. But we know that there are needs, and they would not be in line if they had none.
Well, your story as the president and CEO of the Hawaii Food Bank for the last 2 years will definitely stay in our memories and our hearts. So thank you for joining us.
Lyla, thank you very much for the opportunity, and stay safe and safe well.
Thank you. We've just had the pleasure of meeting Ron Mizutani, who is the president and CEO of the Hawaii Food Bank. Thank you for joining us. I'm here on Island Focus today with Karen Knudsen, who is the Senior Advisor to the President at the East-West Center. Thank you so much for being with us, Karen.
Thank you, Lyla. It's my pleasure.
It's so nice to see you again, especially because I know you have lots to share about the East-West Center and what we can learn from other countries. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about what you're doing now.
When the U.S. Congress established the East-West Center 60 years ago this year, actually, the idea was to help improve the relations and understanding between the United States and the peoples and cultures of the Asia-Pacific region. That has been our mission forever, and it's more important today, especially as we're all going through this pandemic. Everyone is affected, and we can learn from our neighbors how to adapt, how to adjust, how to help each other.
Or what are you sensing from our neighbors in Asia?
Well, there's a concern. There's also, when you're seeing people and coming together, there is, a serious, but a camaraderie. That's one of the key components of this, knowing we are not in this alone. We might all have different experiences, but it's disconcerting for so many of us. But there is a comfort in knowing that we're facing this together and working toward a specific end. So I think that's one of the most important things we're doing, maintaining our contacts with everyone and getting ideas and encouragement from each other.
And every country, every government, every community is in different stages of recuperation and recovery. What can we learn from them?
Again, looking at best practices, because we can see some governments, the authoritative governments, boom, they can handle it in certain ways. We can also see how governments have taken advantage of the situation to control people, to control media. We are very aware of that. But we've also seen how communities and countries have come together, pulled together to help their neighbors, combine resources and reach out to others, and then even share different good practices that's working in this community. Can it be adapted to your community? So I think there are pros and cons with how people are adjusting to this.
So the role of the East-West Center has always been to bring people together, individuals, groups, leaders.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think the idea is when you have folks coming together from all walks of life, as you mentioned, leaders, students, we bring different perspectives. It's very important to hear from people. When you've shared a meal together, when you've had an opportunity to hear people from their own perspectives, we are able to do things together that it's really unimaginable. And I think that's part of the legacy of the East-West Center. You look at the leaders in the region, you look at students and teachers, and they have that commonality of purpose by having come together and really interacted with each other.
And really what I hear you saying is that the peace in the world happens one person at a time, but actually it starts with ourselves first.
It starts with ourselves and being able to see ourselves as part of a broader community and appreciating others and the influence, the great influence they can have on us. So we get out of our own very small focus and really look at others, put ourselves, the empathy of putting ourselves in their shoes, and then realizing together how we can build a better place, a better region, a better country, a better Hawaii.
So what I hear you saying then is part of the resiliency strategy, if you will, is we need to talk with each other. And even though there's physical distancing, especially in Hawaii, we're so close to being with each other that we have to find our ways to do that and keep communicating.
That's where, I've kind of latched on to the idea that Zoom, or through different ways of looking at people face to face and seeing people up close, even though we can't physically be in the same room. But probably more people are communicating with their grandparents and with other folks and people across the region. If you've got family in Japan or Thailand, now you can see them. You spend more time looking and spending that face-to-face time with them. We bring colleagues together from, again, throughout the region. They haven't seen each other in years, and now we're seeing each other. And then they're pulling off and having their own meetings. So there is an upside to this in terms of how we're learning to communicate differently until we can actually come together and share that glass of wine or a cup of coffee.
Or the hug.
The hug, I know. That's hard for Hawaii people.
It is. I often get these emails with cartoons in them. And at first I was a little bit irritated because this is such a serious event that we're supposed to be handling. And now I really relish a laugh.
Yes.
And I hear that that's probably from you. I'm getting that just being human again is how we will get
I think
through
being
it.
human, and that is something, I don't know if it's uniquely American, but I think that's what's appreciated in the region. We can go in a very difficult, and we find humor, not negative, but well, sometimes a little bit, but I think people need that under times of really deep stress or concern. You need that relief, and it's okay. We're laughing. We need to have that in our lives.
As we wrap up our short conversation today, what message would you like to leave with the audience relative to the future also of the East-West Center?
Well, I think what has seen the East-West Center through all of these years, it is a mission-driven organization, and we've had to make adjustments like every company or business or other institution has had to do. But I think if you have a strong mission and really bringing folks together to break down barriers, to understand so that we can move forward together, cooperatively, not as Americans telling everybody what to do, not as businesses, but working together to find common solutions to issues that affect us. I think there's a bonding there, and it gives us all strength. So I think that's the message of the East-West Center, what we've been able to do and what we will continue to do while making adjustments in our new realities.
And I will take that and translate that to us in Hawaii, that our mission is to get through this with aloha and in a way that we know is important to us and the connections with each other.
Yeah, well, Hawaii's a special place, so yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Karen, and for sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyla. Thank you.
What a wonderful occasion to speak with Karen Knudsen, the Senior Advisor to the President at the East-West Center. Thank you for joining us. Today on Island Focus, you will enjoy meeting Anna Neubauer, who is the President and CEO of the Hawaiian Humane Society. Thank you for joining us, Anna.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity, Lyla.
Humane Society has been in our lives for a really long time. Maybe some of our viewing audience doesn't really know what you do and how you do it and how important you are to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've been around in our community for 137 years this year, actually. So quite a long time. And through that time, we've done a variety of different things. But what we focus on now is supporting our community in a variety of ways. So we have our field services team, which supports cruelty and neglect. They're out in the community doing homeless outreach as well, really working with our community to try to make animal welfare better for everyone on the island. We also have our shelter at the Mo'iliili campus, where we are happy to take in animals that people find lost running around the street. We also are here for people that can no longer take care of their animal. And that happens for a variety of reasons, but we're here to accept them and get them the care that they need and find a new home for them. We have a robust adoption program as well.
So when we talk about resiliency of the human spirit, and especially in challenging times such as right now, what role do animals play in that?
Oh, they're so critical for us. So the human-animal bond is something that we talk about pretty frequently, and animals are a part of our family. They're a part of our lives every day, and they can be that support that we need. Oftentimes, particularly if we're alone and we have a pet, they fill that void that not having a human companion would, and they're there for us. They can be our confidant. They can be our support during times of crisis and really fill our lives so much and bring us so much joy.
During this time, I know you've worked really deliberately with your staff, and I'll share a personal story that I adopted one of your dogs.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
After 3 visits and being disappointed because there aren't very many dogs available.
Yeah.
How is your staff finding this period of time and finding their resiliency?
Absolutely. As you know, it's difficult for everyone right now. Our staff, they have partners and family and friends that have lost their jobs, have been furloughed during this time. But what we try to do here is to make sure that they know that we are here to support them. We talk a lot about self-care and that we can't care for the animals in the way that we want to if we don't take care of ourselves first. And so we really want to send that message to our team across the board that, we are here for you. If you need something, let us know, and we can see if we can find the resources for you so you can support yourself in the way that you need to.
And that's actually really good advice for humans as well.
Yep, absolutely. We need to be able to support each other, right? And so if we can take care of ourselves, we can support each other better too.
How are you working with other agencies in the state or in the city at least?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we partner with other animal welfare organizations as well as human service organizations, where right now our pet food bank has been stood up significantly more so than ever before because of the need in the community. And so we're providing pet food to a lot of the human service agencies as well, so we can meet people where they're at. That's a really important component. A lot of times people don't have access to come to our campus, but perhaps they're closer to some of those other human service agencies that are out in the community. And so we want to make sure that there's no barriers for them to be able to keep their pets together with their family.
And someone may not be a pet lover or be comfortable with pets. What are some lessons learned from being with animals that you might share with us?
What we can do to look towards each other, how we can support each other in different ways. If you're not able to have an animal in your life, right, and some people can't for a variety of different reasons, and that's okay. There are other things we can do. We live on a very beautiful island, and there's a lot that we can take joy from just being outside. And I think that, whatever joy you find that fills your cup, I think is really important for your resiliency and finding that space, what fills you up, right?
And moving forward now, as we end our conversation for today, What do you envision for the Humane Society in the future?
Absolutely. We're always looking to grow and bring more services, more robust education, and just more community support to the people and animals on Oahu. So we're looking at building a really robust community CAP program over the next year. We're also looking at increasing our foster program, increasing our transfer program, and building our behavior program. Again, so we can provide more support to the animals in our care, but also more support to our community that needs that.
You're going to be extending into different locations?
We are. So we're looking at the west side. Again, I think with a lot of the human service agencies, they have known for quite some time that there's a lot of different barriers to access for care and support and supplies. And so certainly distance is a barrier for a lot of people. So we know that there's a tremendous need for our services over in that community, and that the distance is a barrier. So I think there are certain members of our community that just aren't even utilizing our services, but they could benefit from those. And so we're looking over on the west side and how we can support in different ways over there.
Parting thoughts for the audience.
This is a challenging time for all of us, and where you find the support, whether it's with your animals, which we love, and we are so appreciative of all the support that the community has provided to us, or whether that's with your loved ones, or just out in nature, find what fills your cup right now. We're in this for the long haul together, and we're here for you as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us, Anne. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lyla. It was our pleasure. Thank you. You've just had the opportunity to meet Anna Neubauer, who is the president and CEO of the Hawaiian Humane Society. Mahalo for being with us. Mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus and joining me in meeting Jessica Lonnie Rich, who is the president and CEO of VASH, the Visitor Aloha Society of Hawaii. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, Jess.
Thank you, Lyla, so much for inviting me on your show.
You know, your organization is critical, actually, at this particular time. Would you tell us a little bit more about VASH?
VASH is a nonprofit agency founded by the Rotary Club of Honolulu in 1997, over 23 years ago. And our main mission is to assist visitors who have been victims of a crime or other adversity, and to provide assistance so that when they go home, they have a positive memory of Hawaii. And I've been the president and CEO for the past 16 years.
How exciting that you have the opportunity to be of service in such a big way.
We show up when people least expect it. They're thousands of miles away from home. They don't know anyone. They don't have any local support. And they're just so grateful that someone is there for them.
Can you share with us what that looks like now?
Absolutely. Before COVID-19, the majority of cases that VASH handled were like thefts on the beach or car break-ins, medical emergencies. All that changed when COVID-19 hit our islands. And on April 6th of this year, we were asked to be the COVID-19 Flight Assistance Program managers. And what that means, Lyla, is that, as you know, COVID is widespread, not just here in Hawaii, but in the world. So we have a lot of outsiders that are coming to Hawaii. And our role is, once they are screened at the airport, if they do not have a place to quarantine for 14 days, if they don't, they ask us to help, and we send them back home with aloha.
Can you share a little bit about lessons learned about resiliency and finding hope again? Because as we reopen Hawaii, as we move into the world again, there's a lot of stress and anxiety that people are feeling.
Absolutely. And, you know, when you talk about resiliency, Lyla, to me, that word means, you know, when someone is going through a trauma or a tragedy, they think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through this. But there is hope. Life does get better. And I'm going to tell you two quick stories. One is a man named Gary. Gary was in the ICU unit at Kaiser Medical Center a couple of years ago. He was a Rotarian. He was going to die. We visited him for a couple of months, and lo and behold, he got better. Do you know that 3 years later, Gary came back to Hawaii to run the Honolulu Marathon? I mean, think about it. Here was a man who was in intensive care. We were called in to say goodbye to him and his family, and he comes back to run the marathon? Talk about resilience. And another quick story, Lyla, is there was a man who, sadly, his wife passed away at one of our hospitals here, and I was with him at the time, and he thought, my life is over. I'm never going to live again. 5 years later, he came to our office with his new wife, and he was happy and living a fulfilled life. Talk about resilience.
And you help people get through the moment as well as look forward to something in the future.
Speaking of that moment, absolutely. Let's go back to the man who was in the intensive care unit. He thought, I'm never going to make it. We put up pictures on the wall of him running because he was a Honolulu Marathon runner. And we said, Gary, look at those pictures. Because if you focus on the wellness and not the fact that you're in the intensive care unit, you will be that runner someday. And lo and behold, we reminded him every day, and he did come back. He even made a kind of a corny joke. When he came to run the marathon, I invited him to our Christmas party, and he looked at my board member who was a funeral director, and he said, "Jerome, I'm really glad you didn't get your hands on me." So yes, there is life after trauma.
So as we wrap up our short conversation today, what parting words can you give to our viewing audience so they can also take this period of time in stride and move through the stress?
The words that I can give to the viewing audience is to remember one thing. As you are going through darkness, of course, the Bible, and one of my favorite quotations in the Bible is, "This too shall pass." That all of us should remember, even though there is darkness, there is rain, there is thunder. After that, there is a rainbow. There is hope and there is life after COVID-19. And I think we need to focus on that, because if we focus on we're never going to get over this, then it will just bring us down. But if we focus on there is resilience, we will get through this. Life will get better. It will, and it does.
And just one last question. How do you keep that energy and that passion and that faith that you have that it will get better?
Because I've seen literally hundreds of people over the years, Lyla, that have been in a tragic situation, losing a wife, losing your health, losing your purse and all your ID, losing your wedding ring when you're here on your honeymoon, and they come back to Hawaii and they say, "My life is wonderful now." Life does get better, and we have to remember that it will, and have hope and faith that the storm will pass and the rainbow will come.
So what I hear you saying, Jessica, is that we really all need to remember how many situations we have survived and how thriving we can be as a result, and not take ourselves so seriously that we get so stressed that we can't handle our lives in the moment.
Absolutely. Our attitude will determine our future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lyla.
We just had the opportunity to meet Jessica Lonnie Rich, who's the president and CEO of VASH, the Visitor Aloha Society of Hawaii. Mahalo for joining us. Thank you for joining us today on Island Focus. I'm Lyla Berg. On behalf of our Island Focus crew and Ōlelo Community Media, aloha and malama pono. Take care of yourselves, and let's be thoughtful of each other. See you soon.